Hello, I'm Jenny Fern. Welcome to my library. I'm a chaotic neutral mechanical engineer who's really into permaculture and wants to talk about books. Today I'm doing a check back in about my reading app video. I posted a video at the beginning of this year because I was in the market for choosing a new reading app. I wanted to transition away from Goodreads, and so I was trying out some other options. And I left that video deciding to not use anything, to use no app at all. I wanted to give a check-in and share how things are going so far. So it is now September. I'm here on a mission to convince you that you don't want a reading tracking app or a reading social media app in your life. I decided to go away from Goodreads because I wasn't super happy with it. I wasn't super happy with the functionality, and I also wasn't happy with it being owned by Amazon. There's plenty of things in my life that are Amazon. I have a Kindle. I get books from the library that are Amazon rentals or Kindle rentals. I do order things from Amazon. I am like a normal American human, but I wanted to remove myself from it where and if possible. So that was like one of the motivations. And then when I was looking at other apps, I was finding the same lack of functionality with other apps. My check-in. I'm loving it. Here's my current method. I read books. I either read physical books, which I would then know that I read because there's a physical stack of them at some point, and I'll know that I've read those books. I also read library rentals, and there is a history of the library books that you've read on Libby, and you can see what you've read. So that's easy. I also read through NetGalley. Similarly, the things that you read in NetGalley, you'll have like a list of those things. There's also other things that I sometimes read that are not any of those things, like short stories in literary journals, or poetry in literary journals, or a fan fiction. Any myriad of things that aren't books. And the amazing thing is, that's still reading. So when I go to talk about what I read this month, that's the other key. I do talk about what I read every month to you all. I get to talk about everything that I read, regardless of if it's a book or not. There's things that I wouldn't be able to track on any app that I can track in a notebook. So that's been my method. I don't always write everything down immediately after I read it, but it doesn't go into the abyss because there's usually some trace that I read that thing that I can go look at later. And then I write it down in my notebook at least once a month. If I didn't do that, I think I would have a really hard time figuring out what I read each year. I write it down, and that's it. My life is so simple. Now for like the social aspects of reading, I talk to people about the books that I read. I talk on BookTube about the books that I read. And I interact with people in the comments, and in real life, I just talk to people about books. That's my social aspect when it comes to reading, and I'm very happy with that. One of the things that I think can be a little bit confusing or obfuscating about social media is you think you're having social interactions when you're not. So I would see people that I don't really know very well. I would see what they read, and I would either like it or I would just see it and be like, wow, so they're reading that. And I would think that I was then having like a social interaction. That's not really a social interaction, you know? It's much more meaningful to me to mention to somebody, like a coworker, oh yeah, what just happened in real life reminds me of this book that I read last weekend. Maybe I hear about something in their life. That means a lot more to me than seeing somebody that I don't really know very well what they read. The reviews, the talking, I do that here. Not everybody has this, so you do whatever you want. Obviously, you can do whatever you want anyway. Stats, that kind of stuff, I don't care about that. Personally, I think that kind of like puts a layer of abstraction on top of the whole idea of reading books that I don't need. All I need is, I liked this book. This book taught me something. I had a good time this month reading these things. That kind of stuff is what actually matters to me, and that's not what you get from stats. There is definitely some cool stuff that you can do, like percent of women authors versus male authors, percent of people from different backgrounds, like different countries, language origin. Like you can do a lot of really cool analysis on your reading if you're so inclined. And I really do think that you can do that if you just write down the stuff and then build that for yourself. But it's more work. So if you're really into that kind of thing, maybe there's a better option for you. What I love and what I'm so happy with is I'm reading what I want, and there's less of these external pressures that warp my reading into being something to fulfill an algorithm. I can read a full book. I can read a novel, right? And hey, when I was using Goodreads, I read a novel. Wow. Same with like a graphic novel or a manga. Those all count as books. But maybe what doesn't count as a book is a story that I read that was translated from Chinese that's available on some website that's like an ancient text. And I've gotten really into that because I have an obsession with the Apothecary Diaries now. Would I have prioritized reading that if it didn't count as a book? All I know is that for me, I wouldn't have, because I was externally influenced. I don't know if other people have this problem. I had this problem for sure. I just didn't think it counted as reading because I couldn't put it in my app. And that's stupid. That's not real life. That doesn't matter. It's reading. But I had such a warped view of what was reading based off of what counted in this tool that I was using. That was my main thing in the last video. The tools that were available to use didn't suit me, and why would I force myself to use those tools if they don't work? If they work for you, they work for you. They weren't working for me, so I decided to use something else. So I'm having a great time, and I just want to like rapid fire tell you the things that you can read that count as reading, and you don't have to not read them just because they're not books. Short stories from literary journals. Literary journals in general. Read literary journals. They're so cool, and they're usually free. So literary journals, there's so much stories on the internet that are like those translated works. Just reading one thing, like a play in a collection of plays, reading a series of poems from a collection of poetry. Poetry. I feel like everybody would be reading more poetry if it weren't for Goodreads. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off base, but we've been so discouraged from reading poetry because we gotta read a whole collection. I don't want to read a whole collection of poetry. I want to read like 7 poems and then like be done. That's how I feel. So I've read more poetry, I've read plays, I've read short stories. Just maybe like 5 short stories in a collection instead of like 30, that kind of thing. I feel so much freer in my ability to read what I want to read. I read fan fiction for the first time. Can you believe it? That's reading. This is my big pitch to you. to treat yourself like a human, read how you want to read, and understand what you're reading and why you're reading it and whatever you want to know about what you're reading in the way that makes sense and is important to you. That's my big pitch. I'm happy with my decision, and I filmed this whole video once before and the file got corrupted, and I think I talked for maybe like half an hour, and this has only been going for 13 minutes, and baby, I'm done, because that's all I have to say. It's been going really well. I would love for people to not force themselves into what is available to them. Sometimes you don't have to live with it. Sometimes you can live without it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the comments and everybody who saw and engaged with the last video that I talked about book tracking apps and Goodreads and stuff like that. Thank you so much. I had some really wonderful input, a lot of different opinions, and I'm sure other people were able to see how other people were dealing with using different apps and stuff like that. I'm so appreciative about that. If you enjoyed this, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think would also enjoy it. Consider liking and subscribing, and I will be back again soon.